the music world has been rocked to its core as explosive news pours in from Miami. Cameron and Jim Jones, the iconic pillars of Dipset, have allegedly been arrested following a violent backstage altercation that left security-stunned fans speechless, and the hip-hop community in total shock. Reports are flying in from multiple sources, claiming that what was meant to be a triumphant reunion concert turned into an all-out war between two former brothers in arms. Yes, you heard that right. Fists were thrown, harsh words exchanged, and the aftermath, pure chaos. Eyewitnesses claim it started as a heated argument over the performance order, but quickly spiraled into something much darker. Broken equipment, shattered egos, and flashing police lights. Within minutes, both Cameron and Jim were allegedly cuffed and hauled away. As cameras rolled and social media erupted, fans are shocked, with many asking, is this really the end of Dipset? What could have possibly triggered such a public meltdown between two legends? Stay tuned, because what's coming next isn't just shocking. It's the kind of raw emotional drama that no one saw coming. And trust us, this is only the beginning. It all started on a night that was supposed to be a celebration. Fans had gathered in droves to witness the long-awaited reunion of Dipset, Cameron, Jim Jones, Jules Santana, and Freaky Ziggy. The venue was buzzing with nostalgia, filled with people wearing old Dipset merch, playing classic tracks on their phones, and telling stories about how these artists shaped an entire era of hip-hop. But what nobody knew was that behind the scenes, tension had been building for weeks. And tonight it was going to erupt in a way that would change everything. Word began to spread around midnight. Whispers turned into frantic social media posts, and soon video clips started surfacing from backstage. At first it was hard to tell what was going on. Shaky footage, blurred faces, muffled yelling. But one thing was clear. Cameron Run and Jim Jones were in the middle of a heated altercation. And it wasn't just verbal. Chairs were overturned, equipment was smashed, and voices were raised to deafening levels. People watching the videos could hardly believe it. Two brothers, once inseparable, now locked in a full-blown fight, just minutes before they were supposed to take the stage together. Fans were stunned, confused, and heartbroken. Sources say the fight began over something as small as a setlist change. Apparently, Jim Jones wanted to open the show with his solo hit, We Fly High, while Cameron insisted they stick to a classic Dipset track. What should have been a minor disagreement spiraled out of control when old wounds were reopened. Jim accused Cameron of always trying to control the spotlight, while Cameron fired back about Jim's disloyalty and going solo when the group was falling apart. Things escalated quickly. The room filled with security, guards, assistants, stylists, all trying to calm the situation down, but neither man was backing off. Insults turned into viz, and shivs turned into punches. According to one crew member, it was like watching a family implode right in front of us. The fight wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Both men shouted things that had clearly been buried for years. Jim reportedly screamed, "You left me out to dry when I needed you the most," while Cameron shot back, "You've always been jealous of me." Admitted those who were close to the group say that although they had reconciled publicly in the past, things were never truly patched up behind closed doors. Tonight, all the fake smiles and forced interviews Cameron undone in a matter of seconds as the chaos unfolded. Backstage fans out front were growing restless. The show had been delayed for over an hour, and people were beginning to chant, unsure of what was going on. Little did they know their favorite artists were being handcuffed just a few feet away. Police had arrived after security called them in, reporting a violent altercation that had left two staff members injured. One had a busted lip, the other a sprained wrist from trying to separate Cameron and Jim. When officers arrived on the scene, they found both rappers visibly bruised, still yelling at each other as they were pulled apart. Video of their arrest quickly went viral. Someone from the crew filmed Cameron being escorted out in cuffs, his face red with rage. Jim Jones followed shortly after, his chain ripped his voice from yelling. The crowd outside the venue watched in disbelief as the two were led into separate police cars. Fans screamed their names. Some begged for them to stop, while others just recorded the moment in stunned silence. What was supposed to be a triumphant return had now turned into a nightmare. Media outlets picked up the story within minutes. Headlines like "Dipset Reunion Ends in Chaos" and "Cameron and Jim Jones Arrested After Backstage Fight" flooded social media. People began sharing old clips of the duo laughing together in interviews, reminiscing about their bond and comparing it to the violent fallout that had just occurred. The betrayal felt personal to many fans. "They raised us," one Twitter user wrote. "We grew up on Dipset. This feels like our big brothers fighting." The internet was flooded with reactions, some shocked, others angry, and a few claiming they saw this coming from a mile away inside the jail that night. Neither Cameron nor Jim spoke to each other. They were placed in separate holding cells. And even though their legal teams arrived quickly, the damage was already done. People close to the situation said that both men were shaken, not just from the fight, but from the reality of how far they have fallen. One insider shared. Jim kept pacing, asking how it got to this point. Cameron just sat with his head down. It was the silence after the storm, and it said more than any punch ever could. Jill Santana, who had been preparing in his dressing room when the fight broke out, reportedly tried to mediate once. He saw things getting heated, but by the time he reached them, it was too late. According to someone in the crew, Jules screamed, "Not like this man. Not after everything we've been through." His voice broke as he watched two of his closest friends get dragged away by police. The image haunted him, and insiders say he broke down backstage, needing to be consoled by his team. The fallout was immediate. Sponsors pulled out of the tour. Fans demanded refunds, and concert promoters began re-evaluating future Dipset shows. Industry insiders whispered that this could be the final nail in the coffin. They were already on thin ice, said one promoter. This might be the end. Social media only intensified the drama. Fans debated who was in the wrong, some blaming Cameron for being too controlling, others accusing Jim of being insecure and aggressive. But no matter which side people chose, the consensus was clear: Dipset as we knew it might be finished. And yet, even in the midst of chaos, there were voices calling for peace. Fellow artists took to social media to express sadness and hope for reconciliation. One post read, "Come on, dip up y'all, bigger than this. Fix it before it's too." Another said, Hip hop needs y'all together, not torn apart like this." But whether or not those words would reach Cameron and Jim remained to be seen as the dust settled and the city tried to process what had just happened. One thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. And just as everyone thought the drama had reached its peak, something unexpected happened the next morning. And just as everyone thought the drama had reached its peak, something unique happened the next morning. A leaked voicemail began circulating online, allegedly from Jim Jones, recorded just hours after the fight while he was still in custody. In the message, Jim's voice was low, tired, and filled with pain. He spoke slowly as if every word weighed him down. "I ain't even mad at Cameron," he said. "I'm mad at myself. We let the fans down. We let Dipset down." The audio, which no one could confirm was legit at first, spread like wildfire by noon. Major hip-hop pages were reposting it with captions like, "Jim Jones regrets everything, and the end of Dipset hits harder than we thought." Fans were torn. Some felt sympathy hearing the regret in his voice. Others questioned whether the voicemail was a calculated move to gain public favor. But behind the scenes, things were far more chaotic than anyone imagined. Chadden said a word publicly. No tweets, no Instagram stories, not even a cryptic post. According to people close to him, he was furious not just about the fight, but about how quickly Jim's camp had started damage control. He thinks Jim's trying to spin the narrative. One insider claimed Cameron feels betrayed all over again. Meanwhile, Jules Santana was doing everything he could to keep things from falling apart completely. He began reaching out to both camps, baiting them to talk to me, to clear the air. But neither Cameron nor Jim was ready. They were both too deep in their emotions, too consumed by years of unresolved tension. Even Freaky Zicky, who had always played the role of the comic relief, went quiet. His team released a short statement saying he was deeply saddened by the events and asked fans to give the group space to heal. What made everything worse was that the fight hadn't just affected Dipset, it had opened old wounds in the hip-hop community. Artists who had once looked up to the group began speaking out. Some shared their disappointment. Others revealed stories of past tensions they'd witnessed firsthand. One anonymous producer told a blog that he had seen Cameron and Jim argue over money years ago, during a recording session, that the brotherhood had been cracking for a long time. Suddenly, the illusion of unity that Dipset had tried to maintain came crashing down completely. And then came the security footage. Late that night, a new clip leaked from the venue's backstage surveillance camera. Unlike the earlier fan film videos, this one was crystal clear. It showed the moment Cameron shoved Jim into a stack of speaker cases, followed by Jim swinging back and knocking over a table. The video was silent, but the violence spoke for itself. Fans were horrified to see their icons behaved this way. More footage showed crew members scrambling to break up the fight, with Jules running and trying to pull Jim away while a security guard pushed Cameron back against a wall. The footage reignited the internet. Hashtags like #tips set a downfall and #CamsHim began trending. News outlets ran with it, analyzing every frame like a sports replay. Body language experts even weigh in, saying Cameron's stance showed deep-rooted frustration, While Jim's movement revealed emotional instability, it became a media circus. Memes exploded, interviews were requested, and even talk shows started referencing the fight as the week's biggest pop culture moment. But behind the scenes, the consequences were becoming very real. The label funding the Dipset tour put everything on hold. Future dates were cancelled, contracts were frozen, and all merchandise linked to the reunion was pulled from shelves. One insider described the situation as financial disaster. Cameron team blamed Jim, saying his temper had ruined everything. Jim's team blamed Cameron, calling him manipulative and controlling. And caught in the middle were dozens of staff dancers and tech crew members who had been relying on the tour for work, all suddenly out of a job. Cameron, known for his sharp tongue and savage clapbacks, finally broke his silence. 2 days later, he posted a black screen on Instagram with one sentence: "Sometimes silence speaks louder than words." Fans were confused. Was it shade? Was it acceptance? Was it the end in the comments? Speculation ran wild. Some begged for a truce. Others called out Cameron for being passive-aggressive. Meanwhile, Jim Jones did a short Instagram live, visibly emotional, where he said, "We supposed to be legends, not a headline. I'm ashamed of how I acted. I lost my cool, but I ain't the only one." As expected, this only added fuel to the fire. Cameron fans accused Jim of Jim's fans defended him, saying, at least he was owning up. And amidst all this chaos, Dipset's legacy was slowly unraveling. Radio stations pulled Dipset tracks from their daily playlists, unsure how the public would react. Podcasts dedicated entire episodes to the fight, with some suggesting that this was the most public group meltdown since M-Way. Others compared it to the fall of June. One host said, "This is what happens when ego goes unchecked for too long." And then came the biggest twist of all. A woman stepped forward, claiming that she had witnessed the fight and that it wasn't about music at all. It was about a woman. According to her, Cameron and Jim Jones had both been romantically linked to the same woman over the years, and recent developments had brought that tension back to the surface. She claimed that Jim discovered Cameron had reconnected with her secretly, and that's what sparked the argument. Backstage, no one could verify her story, but the internet didn't care. It was juicy, scandalous, and exactly the kind of twist fans live for. Memes exploded again. Now, framing the fight as a love triangle gone wrong, people joked about Dipset being the new reality show drama. Others expressed disappointment, saying that two legends should never throw away decades of legacy over a woman. But regardless of whether the story was true, it changed the narrative once more. People weren't just watching a group break apart, they were watching lives unravel in real time, and they couldn't look away by now. Both Cameron and Jim were out on bail, but under court order to stay away from each other until the case was resolved. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. To men who hadn't toured the world together now couldn't be in the same room. Lawyers were involved. Damage control teams were working overtime, and the hip-hop community waited to see what would happen next. As one veteran artist said in a radio interview, "This ain't beef, this is heartbreak." But just when things seemed to have reached rock bottom, a surprise phone call was made. One that no one saw coming, and one that would change everything moving forward. As the days passed, and the public waited in anticipation, tensions continued to rise behind the scenes. Cameron and Jim Jones were dealing with more than just their personal foul. They were dealing with the ripple effect of their actions. Fans, the media, and even their close circles were divided on what had happened. The truth was, no one really knew what the future held for Dipset. Could they salvage what was left of their legacy? Or had the damage been done beyond repair? Cameron, known for his cool demeanor, had been uncharacteristically quiet after the incident. His social media accounts, usually filled with cryptic messages and jokes, had turned eerily silent. Fans, particularly those who had supported him for years, were starting to get worried. They hadn't seen Cameron like this before. He was always the one to make light of a situation, to turn drama into something laughable. But this time, there was no humor in his posts. He wasn't even posting this. Silence was louder than any words he could have said. On the other hand, Jim Jones was more vocal. His Twitter feed was filled with comments about the situation, apologizing to fans, to Dipset supporters, and even to Cameron. "It's been a rough road, but I'm learning and growing," he tweeted. But fans weren't entirely convinced. Some praised him for owning up to his mistakes, while others thought it was just another stunt to gain back the love he had lost. "Real men admit when they're wrong," one fan wrote, "but it doesn't change the fact that the damage is done. We won't forget what happened. Jim." The mixed reactions only seemed to add fuel to the fire. And yet, despite the drama and public division, There was a sense of inevitability. The big question was still looming over everything with Dipset breakup for good. Was this the end of one of the most iconic hip-hop groups of all time? The rumors were running wild, with some sources claiming that Cameron and Jim Jones hadn't spoken in days, while others suggested that a reunion was possible, but only if certain conditions were met. Fans were torn. Some still believed in the power of the group and the bond that had brought them together years ago. Others felt their loyalty shaken to the core. Meanwhile, Jules Santana, who had always been the mediator between the two, was caught in the middle of it all. Sources close to him said that Jules was frustrated and hurt by the entire situation. He had tried for so long to keep the peace between Cam and Jim, and now it seemed like all that work was unraveling. But despite his frustration, Jules was determined to make things right. He knew that if there was any hope of mending things, it had to start with him. So Jules took matters into his own hands. He reached out to both Cameron and Jim Jones, separately trying to arrange a private meeting. He knew it had to be face-to-face. No more phone calls, no more cryptic messages. It had to be real. Jules was willing to do whatever it took to save Dips. After several tense days, Jules managed to get both Cameron and Jim Jones in the same room. The moment was monumental. It was the first time since the brawl that the two had agreed to speak. But when they finally sat down, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Cameron, known for his sharp tongue and quick wit, was unusually quiet. Jim Jones, however, was more open. He had been thinking about the consequences of his actions, and he was ready to address everything. The room was filled with an uncomfortable silence as the two men sat across from each other, the weight of their history and their recent fallout hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Cameron broke the silence. His voice was steady, but there was an undeniable edge to it. "You know, Jim," he said slowly, "I never thought I'd be sitting here with you after what happened. You disrespected me, and not just in front of fans, but in front of family. That hurt." Jim Jones, visibly regretful, responded, "I know, and I can't take it back, but I'm here now and I want to fix this. I want us to get past this. Cameron, I'm sorry." Cameron paused for a moment, as if weighing his options. There was a long pause before he responded, "You said that before, Jim, but actions speak louder than words." It was clear that there was still a lot of hurt and mistrust between them, but as the conversation continued, there were moments where it seemed like a reconciliation was possible. They talked about their shared history, about the days when Dipset was on top of the rap game. They laughed, they reminisced, and for a brief moment, it felt like they were back in the studio together, making magic. But reality soon set in. The damage had been done, and the road to healing wasn't going to be easy. Meanwhile, fans were still waiting for a public statement from both Cameron and Jim Jones. The anticipation was killing them. They wanted answers. They wanted to know if Dipset was really over, or if the two could pull it together. Fans took to social media in droves, demanding an update. "We need to know what's going on. Is Dipset over or not?" One fan tweeted, "You both hurt the fans. Now you need to fix this." The pressure was mounting. Cameron and Jim Jones couldn't hide forever. Finally, the moment came. Cameron posted a new message on Instagram. It was short, but it said a lot. "Sometimes the strongest bonds are tested. We've been through a lot. We'll figure it out. Stay tuned, Jim." Jones followed suit with a message of his own. "Real talk. We've been down too long. We're stronger than this. Stay with us." While these messages didn't offer any concrete answers that gave fans hope that maybe, just maybe, Dipset wasn't done after all, but the question remained, was it too little too late? Could the fans forgive them for the public spectacle, the fight, and the betrayal? Or had Cameron and Jim Jones pushed too far, damaged the group beyond repair? The coming days would tell. But for now, everything was still up in the air as the story unfolded. The hip-hop world watched closely. Cameron and Jim Jones, two icons who had once ruled the rap game together, were now fighting for their legacy. Would they find a way to heal, or was debt over? As the news of the Backstage Brawl spread like wildfire, the hip-hop world was rocked to its core. Cameron and Jim Jones, two of the founding members of the legendary group Dipset, had been involved in a violent confrontation that no one could have predicted. Fans, media outlets, and even their fellow industry peers were left in shock as the details of the fight continued to unfold. What had been a night of celebration quickly turned into chaos, and now it seemed like the future of Dipset itself was in jeopardy. The backstage altercation was said to have escalated, quickly fueled by years of unresolved tensions between the two artists. Reports claimed that words were exchanged, followed by a physical altercation that led to both Cameron and Jim Jones being arrested on site. The situation was described as intense, with both rappers allegedly throwing punches and causing a scene that could not be ignored. Witnesses at the scene claimed that security had to step in, but by that point, the damage had already been done. The brawl had not only left a lasting mark on the event, but had also left fans wondering if the two iconic figures could ever repair their fractured relationship in the days that followed. Speculation began to swirl. Rumors about the cause of the fight spread like wildfire. Some claimed it was a personal dispute between the two, while others pointed to deeper issues within the group. The fans who had once seen Cameron and Jim Jones as brothers in arms were now left questioning the loyalty that had once defined Dipset. Could they ever reunite after this public display of violence? Or was this the final straw that would end the group's legacy once and for all? While some fans remained hopeful, others took to social media to express their disappointment. "This is at the end of an era." One tweet read, "Babette was the best, but if they can't even get along, what hope do we have?" The comments were filled with similar sentiments as people struggled to process the sudden breakdown of one of hip-hop's most influential groups for years. Cameron and Jim Jones had been the faces of Dipset, and now their feud was casting a dark shadow over everything they had built. Cameron, never want to shy away from controversy, addressed the situation on his social media in a series of posts. He expressed his frustration, stating that he had tried to maintain peace, but the betrayal he felt was too much to ignore. "Some people will never change," he wrote. "I did my part, but when you constantly have to watch your back, it's time to move on." His words were harsh, and they seemed to confirm what many had feared, that Dipset as a group was no longer a viable entity. But even as Cameron's message seemed to signal the end of an era, Jim Jones was not ready to give up just yet. Jim Jones, on the other hand, took a more subdued approach. While his emotions were clearly running high, he posted a message that hinted at the possibility of reconciliation. "We've been through too much together to let one fight define us," he wrote. "I'm not ready to walk away, not yet." His words sparked a glimmer of hope for fans who still believed in the bond between him and Cameron. Could the two legends find a way to put their differences aside and rebuild what they had once shared, or was the damage irreparable? As the situation continued to unfold, the media began to weigh in, with some outlets taking sides and others remaining neutral. Hip-hop blogs, podcasts, and news channels all weighed in on the drama, with many questioning whether this public dispute was just a temporary setback or a permanent fracture. The timing of the altercation was particularly troubling, as Dibs had been preparing to embark on a highly anticipated reunion tour. Fans had been waiting for years to see the trio back on stage together, and now it seemed like that dream was slipping further and further away. In an exclusive interview, Jules Santana, who had always been caught in the middle of Cameron and Jim Jones' disputes, opened up about the situation. He expressed his frustration, stating that he had tried his best to keep the peace between the two, but it was clear that both men had reached their breaking points. "We were brothers, man," Jules said, his voice heavy with emotion. "But sometimes things change. People change. I can't force something that isn't there anymore." His words reflected the sadness and inevitability of the situation. Dipset had been a family, but now it felt like that family was falling apart. The public fallout from the fight continued to grow, and the pressure on both Cameron and Jim Jones intensified. Their fans were divided, with some expressing their anger and disappointment, while others were still holding out hope for a resolution. "We need Dips. Sit back together," one fan wrote on Instagram. "They were the best in, let this be the end." But as time went on, it became increasingly clear that this wasn't just a minor disagreement. There were deeper issues at play that could not be easily ignored or forgotten. As Cameron and Jim Jones struggled to navigate the aftermath of the fight, they were forced to confront their personal demons. Old grudges, unspoken resentments, and feelings of betrayal began to surface. What had once been a brotherhood built on trust and loyalty seemed to be crumbling under the weight of ego, pride, and misunderstanding. Was clear that the road to reconciliation would not be an easy one, and even the most optimistic fans began to lose faith. The situation continued to spiral, and in the days that followed, rumors about the future of Dipset's world. Some sources claimed that Cameron had already started working on new music without Jim Jones, while others suggested that Jim Jones was considering a solo career. Neither rapper had confirmed or denied these rumors, but it was clear that the group's future was uncertain as more time passed. It became apparent that Dipset's fans had known it was no longer the powerhouse at once. Final nail in the coffin came when Cameron and Jim Jones both posted cryptic messages on social media, all but confirming that their professional relationship was over. Cameron's message read, sometimes you got to let go. There's no love lost, but it's time to move forward. Jim Jones posted a similar message. Sometimes it's not about being right, it's about moving on. Their words left fans heartbroken, but also resigned to the fact that Dipset was no longer a viable group. The fallout from the Backstage Brawl had been monumental, and while Cameron and Jim Jones had been inseparable, their fight had proven that even the strongest bonds could be broken for fans of Dipset. It was the end of an era, one that had been filled with groundbreaking music, unforgettable moments, and an undeniable cultural impact. But as the chapter closed on Dipset 1, question remained: would Cameron and Jim Jones ever reconcile? Only time would tell. But for now, it seemed like Dipset was truly over. What an emotional roller coaster, right? Cameron and Jim Jones. Backstage Brawl has left fans reeling, and the future of Fabset is uncertain with all the drama, betrayals, and heartbreak. What do you think? Do you believe Cameron and Jim Jones can ever reconcile? Or is this the end of Dipset for good? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. Don't forget to like this video if you were shocked by the explosive turn of events, and hit that subscribe button for more breaking news. We'll keep you updated with all the latest developments on Cameron, Jim Jones, and the future of Dipset. And hey, if you're a true fan of Dipset, you won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a juicy update. Keep the conversation going. Share this video with your friends, and let's talk about what went down. Until next time, stay tuned for more drama, more updates, and all the fig sip from the world of entertainment. You won't want to miss. From the world of entertainment, you won't want to miss.